I'm Jeff Maston with Academic Services. I'm the administrator for Blackboard, and today we're going to be going over the Blackboard Grade Centers, an overview of the Blackboard Grade Center. Okay. In your Blackboard course, to access the Faculty Grade Center, we want to scroll down to the control panel, which is down on the left. There's a link right here for My Grades. That's the student view of the grade book, but the faculty view of the Grade Center is down in the control panel, and we're going to click Full Grade Center, Full Grade Center. And my menu collapsed because of the resolution that I have the monitor set at right here. But if you want to see a little bit bigger view of your Grade Center, you can click this this arrow that it controls whether the menu is there or not. Okay, so this is the default view of the Grade Center for a new blank Blackboard site. So if you haven't done anything in a Blackboard site at all, this is what your Grade Center would look like. So it's got the default columns of last name, first name, username, which is their Blackboard username, and then student ID, which is their 7-digit student ID number. And then this last access date, this is this is a column you can come and look at, and you can see the last time the student was in your Blackboard site. So that's not a last access of Blackboard itself. The student actually had to come into your site for this date to get updated, so you can know whether they're working in your site or not, or the last time that they came in at least to look in your site. And then this availability column, and that tells you, like it's possible to set a student so that the course is unavailable to them. And if a student drops the course, ICC's automated process would make the course unavailable to them, so they would no longer be able to get into your Blackboard site, but everybody else still would be. So that's what that column tells you. And then we've got two total columns that are in the Grade Center by default. The weighted total column, that column does nothing unless you set it up. So that's just in there. It'll be just a blank column unless you want to set up weighted grades. And then the total column, and that by default, that gives you a running total of the points for all the rest of the columns that you add into the Grade Center. So that's the default setting of it, is a running calculation of the total points as they're entered for the student, or as they're generated for the student throughout the semester. That's what that default column comes in, and we'll cover ways to adjust that in a little bit. So I want to start by adding my own columns to the Grade Center. And so I've got at the top of the screen here, I've got the Create Column button. And I'm going to just I'm just going to fill in the bare minimum on this one. I'm going to call this Homework 1. So I've got to give the column a name. And the ones that have a star next to it are the required columns. And there's only 2 required columns in order to use to create a column. So there's column name, and I've got to scroll down here to where it says points possible. So I've got to say how many points this Homework 1 is worth. And I'm going to say that's worth 10 points. And then when I'm ready, or when I'm done with that, I'll hit submit. So there are a lot of other settings here. I'll circle back around to those in a second. So that a new column is always added to the end of the Grade Center. And then there's a scroll bar at the bottom of the Grade Center sheet that lets, or the bottom of the page here, that lets you scroll back and forth, like so that was added to the end, and it was just scrolled off the screen. So there it is, the title of the column, homework 1. And now if I want to enter grades and say, okay, everybody did a good job on homework 1, I'm gonna click into the first cell. I'm gonna click into the first cell and give everybody 10 points. I'm just typing 10, hitting enter, typing 10, hitting enter, typing 10, and hitting enter. So there I've got the scores entered for everyone. All right, so just similar to working with a spreadsheet like Excel, you can just type in the cell, click on the cell you want to type in, and type in the cell to make changes. If I want to change something, as like this person didn't get 10, I can click on the cell again and type the grade that I want to change it to. So that person gets 9 now. All right, so now I want to create a second column and take a look at some of those other settings that I didn't look at the first time. So create column. Just going to add homework 2 this time. And so so I entered that for the column name. The next column, the next field down is grade center name. And this only appears to the instructor in the instructor view of the grade center. So I called that homework 2. But if, for example, the title of the column name was too long, so if you had a little bit longer description of what the homework was about, that might not all fit across the little bit of space that you have at the top of the column. So if you want to make it say something a little bit different in your view of the grade book, you can type homework 2. So HW2, so instead of homework 2, I typed HW2, and that's for sure going to fit across the top of the column. But the students don't see that though, so that's just for you, so you can have an easier time keeping track of things in your view. Okay, so the next thing is primary display. So this shows, like if you want the points that you're recording to display as a score, you have a couple other options: letter, text, percentage, complete, incomplete. So if you want to enter things in you've got to enter things in the format that you choose for the primary display. So I'm going to leave this set to score, but I'm going to set a secondary display which shows the letter grade. So the points will show, and right next to the points there'll be the letter grade that the student earned based on the calculation of the points they earned versus the points that the homework assignment was worth. Categories. This can help you organize your grade center, and these categories can be used for calculations like weighted grades and such. So if you want to, and the categories do display to the students in their view of the grade center, so if you want to keep things organized a little bit, you can choose to assign what category something is assigned to. And there's some that are in here by default, and all of these default ones are linked to a grade center or to a Blackboard tool. But you can create your own categories. So if you have, if you want this category to be called homework, there's not one right here that is called homework, but on another screen you can add to this list. For now, I'm just going to leave it set to no category. And I'm going to enter in this homework assignment is also going to be worth 10 points. Rubrics. If you score with a rubric, we'd be happy to help you figure out how to use those. That'd be covered that's a different topic, but you can associate a grading rubric with a grade center column, and then you can use that rubric to score with or to display to the students. And then you can assign a due date for your assignment, and the students do see this due date. The due dates do prompt the students and show up in some of the automated processes of Blackboard. But I'm going to leave the due date off for this example. And then down at the bottom here, include this column in Grade Center calculations, yes or no. I'm going to leave this set to yes, but if I had, say, a practice problem or a practice quiz or something where I wanted to show the students the results in the Grade Center, but I didn't want that to count against their grade, I could say, no, this particular column does not count in their grades, and that Blackboard would ignore that column for the purposes of calculating the grades. Show this column to students if you've wanted to record something but not have it show up to students. So maybe it's something for your own records, but it's confusing to the students. So something that doesn't count for the grade, but the students are confused why they're seeing it. You could hide it. You could hide it from the students with this setting right here. And then there's the last option is to show statistics for the column, and so it would show the student along with their grade. They'd show the class average and the median score that was for this particular assignment. So I'm going to hit submit on this one. And I'm going to scroll over. So again, the new Grade Center column is always added to the far right. And just as a little tip, I leave the total column at the front, at the front as the first thing in the Grade Center. That's oftentimes what students are kind of interested in seeing when they pop in, maybe. And then if you try and put the total column at the far right, every time you add a new column to the Grade Center, you'll have to be adjusting the column organization all the time in order to keep the total column on the far right, because the new Grade Center column you add would always jump over to the right of that, and then you'd be having to drag it. So if you leave the column where it's at, the total column where it's at, then you don't have to move it all throughout the semester as you add things. Let's see here. I want to, well, so now, remember I set that setting so that my header would display as homework 2, but my 2 homework columns, I don't have them consistent. And so I want to change some settings on this column so that they're consistent with the other homework column. And to do that, everything in this Grade Center's got a drop down. Like, so if you point at any cell in the Grade Center, there's a drop down that you can click for more options. So each cell has a little menu, but also each column header has a menu. So if I want to if I want to go back and make an adjustment after I created a column, I can click that drop down, and it's got a list of options for me here, and I'm going to just click on Edit Column Information. It's going to bounce me back into that same screen that I was on when I set up the column initially. And so I've got homework 1 here. I want to do that. I like the way that abbreviated Grade Center name worked. And so I'm going to make both of them the same. So I'm going to type HW1 here for the Grade Center name and hit submit. And again, that's not, the students still see the full name. Their view of the grade book is listed down the page, and they've got a lot of room on their screen for the name of the assignment. Your assignment names are at the top of the column, and so you can use those abbreviations, that Grade Center column name, for your view of the grade book that the students don't see. Just one more thing. I'm not going to cover everything on that drop-down list for the column headings, but one more thing to note. If you want to hide a column, you can. But note that there's 2 hide options on this menu. There's one that says hide from students, and that's a toggle on and off. So I'll go ahead and I'll hide this one from the students in a second. but there's also one that says hide from instructor view. And so if you're not interested in seeing it in your view of the grade book, just keep in mind that if you don't hide it from students, but you do hide it from yourself, the students can still see it. So if you want no one to see it, you want to hide it from the students first, and then hide it from yourself. Otherwise, students might be seeing something that you don't remember that they're still seeing in the grade book. So I'm just going to hit hide from students, and in that case, there's a little symbol that appears at the top of the column with a red slash. That indicates that the students can't see that one. And I'm going to go back up and hit it again to make that column again visible to the students. Okay, so I'm going to go coming back to the total column. So you see, like, as I entered in my grades, this total column was adding up the points that I entered. And so I'm going to enter in some points for homework 2. So the first person got 8 points, 7 points, 5 points. And so you can see that the total column is adding up the points as I enter them, and it's doing a running total, which means if you don't enter a score for a student, it's not counting it against them. So these first people where I have entered the grades in, if I click on their score in the total column, up on this grade information bar, this light gray bar across the top of the grade center, it tells me some information about that cell. So it's telling me for this particular student that I've clicked on the score for, their total grade, they've got 20 points possible, and so they've got 18 points I see down here, and the total points possible is 20. For this person where they've only done one assignment and I've only graded them on one assignment, I click on their score of 10. It's telling me that their total grade is 10 points possible out of 10, or they got 10 out of 10 points possible. And if I enter a 0 for that student, then if I enter a 0 for that student, I'll end up with, oops, I'm clicking on the wrong cell. So it's telling me they got 10 points possible out of 20, or 10 points out of 20 points possible now. So again, if you're only interested in the score displaying, it may not matter if you enter the zeros, but if you want the Blackboard to be doing the calculation of, if you want Blackboard to be doing the calculation of a letter grade or something like that, then you want to make sure that you enter zeros for assignments that the students don't do, or else the default grade center setting won't count that against the student. So I'm going to go click the drop down at the top of the total column, and so I want to change some settings about this total column now. So I'm going to click the drop down at the top of the total column, and I'm going to hit edit column information for this column. And there's different options here for the total column than there were for the regular columns that I entered in, the standard columns. But I want to hit edit column information for the total column, and this takes me to a screen where I can change some settings about how the total column calculates. And one of the settings I'm going to change is so I could have, well, let's see, I could give the column name something other than total. So if you want to say final score for the semester, if you want to say total points, however you want to say it, you you can change that name for the total column. And now here for primary display and secondary display, so this is where you might want to change this setting. So if you would rather it display as a percentage to the students, you can, rather than the score, you can do that. Or if you would you would rather them, and then also, so I'm going to change that. So instead of points, my total column is going to display as a percentage, and instead of and I can set a secondary display for that only displays to me, only displays to the instructor in their view of the grade book. So if you want to see the percentage for their final grade, and you want to also know what letter grade would be assigned to them, that will display in the same column for you. And there are some additional settings down here for changing how the total column calculates. And one of them is calculate as a running total. I'll go ahead and change that to no, so that it's not calculating as a running total. And by doing that, like all of those any blank columns that the students don't have a score recorded for yet are calculating as a 0. So now I've got I've got my total column, instead of displaying that they've got the number of points that they had. So this person had 18 points out of 20. That's 90%, and they've got an A. So the 90%, this first part of what's displaying in the column, that's what displays to the students. The secondary display in parentheses, that just displays to you as the instructor. And but you notice, like this person where I've entered the 0, they got 10 points for this assignment and 0 points for this assignment. So 10 points out of 20, they got 50%. So since I changed the setting so that the total column is not a running total anymore, the person that doesn't have a score entered for the homework 2, they're showing that they have 50% also. So the thing about like not using the running total is that you want to be clear with your students about what the column is showing, because it can scare them as soon as you add a column, or if you add a couple columns to the grade center that they don't have a score in, all of a sudden like this. So this is a person's got a perfect score and everything they're supposed to have completed, but because they haven't been graded yet on this column, it's showing that they have an F. So I'm going to go back and change this to a running total, because I don't want to scare the students like that. But there might be instances where you don't want to have the running total, so you can change that. Let's see. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in the right column here. Edit column, or click the drop down, edit column information, and I'm going to change this. Oh no, I'm going to change calculate as a running total. I'm going to change that back to yes. And so those people that don't have a score recorded for homework 2, they're showing that they have 100% A's now. And then when I enter in, it's waiting for me to enter in their score. And once I enter in a score, then the running total calculates. It starts including this column for that student. If you click on the total for a particular student, it will tell you again how many points possible that particular student has. So you can kind of compare different students to make sure that there's something that's not missing for them by clicking on their name. Why does this person have 20 points and this person only has 10 points possible? Well, it's because this hasn't been filled in for this student yet with the running total. Just a few more things here. Okay, I'm going to switch over to a grade center in a different class that has a little bit of stuff in it, just to cover a few more quick topics. So I'm going to go back to the Blackboard at ICC page, and I'm going to click into my other site. And again, this menu, because of my resolution that I have the monitor set at, this menu collapsed again, but I'm going to open it up so I can navigate down to the grade center and then full grade center. And I have some columns here already set up, and I just wanted to point out that some columns in the grade center are associated with particular Blackboard features. And so this SA1, and it's got these exclamation points in it, that's the sign that it's weighted, it needs to be grading. There's something with that, associated with that column that needs to be graded. And this SA1, I've got it associated with an assignment. So when I created an assignment in Blackboard, in my Blackboard site, this column was automatically created, and then as student turned in their work through the assignment, I see this notification, and then I can actually click on the drop down for that cell, and I can jump in to view their paper that they turned in. Which we've got another presentation on the using the assignment feature, but so here is their paper, and you can actually grade it right here, and like make comments and things and mark up. So we got another session on that. I'm going to go back and I want to show you where that assignment is, just to be clear. So out in my course content area, so my students would browse to my course content area, and I might have folders and subfolders. I've got an assignment here that I created in a place for them to turn in their work, and because I created that column was created in the grade center, where when they turn in their work, that's where I go to pick it up. And then so because of that, so that's kind of a special column, and there's just a little bit of limitations. You can still edit it and things if you want to change the points and things like that, like we did with the regular homework column, but there's one option that's missing. So if I click the drop down for a regular homework column, if I wanted to delete this column, so say I decided I'm not going to do the homework 1 assignment with my students and I don't need that column in my grade book, I click the drop down at the header of the column, and I can hit delete column, and that column would go away. But when there's a column that's associated with a feature like the assignment feature or the test feature, a graded discussion board, or so on, those columns can't be deleted unless you delete the assignment. So that assignment's still out in my course someplace. That assignment needs someplace for the papers to be turned into. And so it doesn't, if you're saying, why can't I delete this column? I want to delete this column. That's because you got to go back out to your course content area where you set that assignment up for the students, and you're not going to do that assignment. You can choose to delete that column, delete that essay assignment, and then that column SA2 would also be deleted in the grade center. But okay, just one or two more things. Okay, so we've got these menu buttons across the top here, and we've covered creating a column. Another important one is the Manage menu here, and that's where you find if you want to make some changes to the way things are working in your grade book, you want to look in this Manage area. And so I told you that you could create your own categories. So if you wanted to add extra categories in order to be able to better describe the work that you have in your class, you could go to Manage and Categories. But I want to go right now, I want to go to Manage Column Organization, because I've got in my columns here, I've got SA1, SA2, Homework 1, Homework 2, then I've got Homework 4 and Homework 3. So I want to switch Homework 3 and Homework 4. I want to change the order of those columns because they're not in the order that I like here, or it's an order that doesn't make sense or makes it confusing for the students. So I'm going to go Manage column organization. And I'm going to, so this is a list of all the columns in your grade center. If you had a hidden column, you could come here to unhide it. But here is also where you can reorder the columns. And so I've got, I just dragged, I clicked on the little 4-pointed arrow handle, and I could drag and drop to reorder these columns. So the order they appear on this list is the order they'll appear across the top of the page in your grade center. And just, this is a nice place to come also, like if you can see all the points possible for all of the assignments here, so you can check and make sure that you haven't accidentally assigned something, points possible that you didn't intend. Or if you're assigning categories to your assignments, you can see here whether they're in the right category or not. So, so these two are assignments because they're making use of Blackboard's assignment feature. But if you wanted to change the category one of these homework was assigned to, you can, or you can do multiple of the same. So I want all of the homework to also display as an assignment in the assignment category. So you'd say change category to assignment, or I can change category to one of these other default ones. Again, it's good to make your own if you're gonna so if you use the assignment feature, it's going to be assigned to the assignment category. If you make your own, then it would only go to that. If you came to set it, and you can set it here, or you can set it as you're creating the column, or if you're editing an individual column. But here, you can change all of them at once. So I just changed all of the homework ones so they say discussion next to it. And I have to hit submit before these changes are made. And maybe since I want the columns to change, I'm going to change these back to no category. And so I'm going to hit submit, and that's going to change my order of the columns. So now you see homework 1, homework 2, homework 3. And if I scroll over, there's homework 4. And so the last thing I want to show you is I'm going to circle back around to this My Grades area. So this was the instructor view of the grade center. The students don't see a grid like this. They only see their own grades, and it's not listed across the screen. It's listed down the screen for them. If an instructor clicks on My Grades, well, I guess they see kind of a default view of what the students see. And then just the final thing here is that you can, if you want to practice like entering things into the grade book, you can you can click the top. You can click the top here, this Enter Student Preview, and that generates a student account inside your Blackboard site that you can work with, and you could enter things into like you could turn in assignments or whatever. And also, like if you exit that student preview, you have the option of keeping that preview user in your site. So if you could practice entering in the grades on that preview user to make sure things are calculating like you like or whatever. So usually when you leave the preview mode, then you'd want to just delete the preview user. But if you had a reason that you wanted to work with that student still in your grade center, when you switch back to instructor mode, you can keep that student user. So, okay, so that is all I wanted to cover. Exit in. And so again, we have resources that are available. And actually, like, so down in the, just down in your Blackboard site, if you go down to help, there's a Blackboard help for instructors, and that will take you to a page where you can see an explanation of these various features. So there's a lot of nice documentation on grading. And also, we have some resources. If you click on, when you're in Blackboard, if you click on faculty resources, right now there's not a lot of things listed here, but there's links here that will take you out to lots of resources that we have set up for remote course delivery assistance. So that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for listening.